From California to Oklahoma, two pre-dentals who became best friends.
We're here to have fun, share stories, and inspire others to never give up on their dreams of becoming a dentist.
I'm Dominique.
And I'm Maddie.
And we're your dental mentors.
Hey, future doctors.
Hey, you guys.
Welcome back to this week's episode. We have a very exciting episode for you guys. This episode is going to be all about Dominique and her journey to getting into dental school, and she'll be sharing a lot of her story and how she got to where she is today.
I'm super excited to share, and thank you to everyone that listened into our first episode last week. We're super stoked that this is real and happening. It's something, like we said, we've been talking about, and the fact that it has come to fruition is super cool. So I'm stoked to share my story today, and hopefully you can gain some little nuggets of wisdom from what I do have to share.
It is a total pinch me moment that this podcast has officially launched by the time you guys are listening to this. And me and Dominique have just been planning this podcast for such a long time. So we are really happy and excited to share it with you guys. And before Dominique starts, she doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I did want to just share a brief introduction about Dominique for you guys before she shares. So Dominique is truly one of the kindest, most inspiring people I have ever met. She is the best at tackling habits head on, and she always does what she says she's going to do. She makes a goal for herself and absolutely delivers every single time, no matter how many times it takes her. She is a powerhouse and pushes me to be 1% better each and every day. We have done so much of this journey together, and I couldn't have found a better dental bestie to have during arguably the most difficult part of applying to dental school. She is the type of friend who holds you accountable, motivates you, and celebrates you when you succeed. I've been so blessed to have her alongside my dental journey these past 2 years, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear her story today. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Dominique, and we can all listen to her amazing story.
Thank you, Maddie.
Of course.
Always make me like blush.
That was very scripted. I just have to write it out because I just didn't want to miss anything. You are the best and love you so much, Dom. And I have heard the story beforehand. And you guys are going to be very much inspired and relate a lot, I think, to Dominique's story. It's very unique, but very relatable at the same time.
Yes, thank you so much, truly. It means the world to have someone speak life over you, and that is one of my biggest tips is find friends and people who will speak life over you always and truly make you feel greater than you ever think you are. So I'm so thankful for you, and I'm super stoked to share my story. Like I said, I really hope you find some nuggets of wisdom out of this because this journey has been a long time coming. I am actually just going to start with prior to applying to school and how I got to this journey of actually applying to dental school and now about to start dental school come May. But prior to applying to school, I had attended multiple pre-dental events, whether that be pre-dental simulation days or pre-dental days specifically at OU. I had also shadowed since I was about 16 years old at my pediatric dentist's office. So I'm going to share more how I got into dentistry from the start. So in 5th grade, I went to a project-based charter school growing up. I was there 1st through 8th grade, but 5th grade specifically, we had to do a careers project. And for this careers project, we were to interview someone within that career space. So I was actually going through orthodontics. I had been sent to the orthodontist, got a referral to the orthodontist because I had very crowded mouth. And I actually was told by my pediatric dentist that I was tongue thrusting. For those of you who aren't very familiar with dental terms, when you tongue thrust, you're actually not swallowing properly. So your tongue pushes the front of your teeth. It's kind of like it can cause people to have buck teeth over time if they don't get this solved. And so definitely did not want that. And it's not great for your overall development either. So I had to be put in something called a tongue prong. And it basically is 2 bands that are wrapped around your back molars with a wire that stretches around. This all goes in the inside of your mouth with a wire that stretches around, and there's 4 sharp prongs that come off of that spot right behind your incisors on the front. And my tongue was like hamburger meat from this appliance.
Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
so awful. Like, oh my gosh. My
Ow.
mom will talk about it till this day. She'll be like, I just felt so bad. I felt like I was torturing you, like having that appliance in. But it did what it was
Someone
supposed to
call
do.
CPS.
Seriously. But it did what it was supposed to do. For the most part, I still sometimes have some slight issues. Like you can kind of tell I have like a very little baby lisp sometimes. But for the most
I
part, it
don't
did
think
what it was
I've
supposed
ever
to
heard
do.
it.
Really? Okay.
It
I
did,
feel like
yeah.
I hear it in my head. But it's supposed to keep your tongue when you're swallowing correctly to sit at the roof of your mouth. That's where your tongue is supposed to live when you swallow and like you chew food and you're swallowing food. Like no matter what you're doing and you're swallowing, your tongue's supposed to live there. But my tongue was pushing forward. So that's why I was going through orthodontics, which is what, as I was saying, got me into dentistry. I was so interested. I always loved going to the dentist. Whenever my mom told us we had dental appointments, I was so pumped, could not wait to go.
Yep.
And I was super inspired by one of the dental assistants that worked at the pediatric dentist as well. Her name was Bailey, and I just loved her personality. She was so bubbly, even till this day. I will never forget her. She was just amazing at what she did. And we weren't too far off in age when I had first met her, but she was a dental assistant. I thought it was the coolest thing. I was like, how did you get here? How did you do this? But her uncle was a dentist, so she kind of had an in that sense. So other than that, going through my school careers project, I got to interview my orthodontist, and I was super excited because he was someone that I thought was just the coolest person ever. I loved his job even before I knew much about it. And when I got to talk with him and ask him all these questions that were pretty basic, but what do you like about your job? What are the hours like? How do you spend your holidays? Like, do you think the pay is pretty good for what you do? Everything he was saying, I just immediately fell in love with, because as a woman who's going to be going into dentistry, I knew in my heart, like I've always wanted to be a mom. And so I knew later in life, whenever that time come that I would have a family, it would be a great career option for me, because I would be off every single holiday with my children. I'm able to, make my own schedule. There's a good chance, if I work really hard the first, 5-10 years, that I won't have to work 5 days a week. I could even go down to 3 days a week, because my pediatric dentist at the time, she only worked 3 days a week. And so it was just so cool to know that I would be in a profession where I was not only, able to have that freedom, but also appreciate it at the same time, because dentistry is definitely something that is needed. It's an essential thing to life.
Yes.
So
You
I was
can
just
do
super
both.
excited.
Yeah,
Yes,
you can be a mom, you can be a doctor. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, because you can do both.
Yes. Exactly. You can do both. And I love that this career choice was going to give me that option. And moving forward, I had started shadowing when I was 16, as I mentioned. I shadowed at my pediatric dentist, and I also shadowed at my orthodontist office along the way too. And once 2018, I'll kind of move forward, but I moved out to Oklahoma, attended Oklahoma City University in 2015, and was basically just trying to figure out how I was going to move forward into applying. So found all that out, figured out how to apply for the DAT, took my DAT, and my first time applying to dental school was actually in the summer of 2018. So I had studied all summer long. I decided to make it my full-time job when I was off from school. And, I thought that doing this was going to be the best choice. And unfortunately, I made a 16 all around on my DAT, and I was extremely defeated. I seriously, I'm not kidding, locked myself in my room for the rest of the night. I didn't eat any dinner and cried myself to sleep. So it was a really great first,
because I can relate. Yes.
But, here I was. I seriously, my mom was like, we didn't know what to do with you. Like, no one knew what to say to you. So no one said anything. And like, it was so terrible. I look back now and I'm like, why did I do that to myself? Because it was so awful. But here I was. I still applied with the 16 all around DAT, truthfully knowing I was not going to get in. But I did this because it was more of the experience to, let's say, get my feet wet. I didn't have much guidance, as I didn't know anyone else who was going through this process applying to dental school, or was a current dentist who had gone through the process recently or was in dental school already. So something I did make sure to take advantage of when I could was to attend the pre-dental days at University of Oklahoma's College of Dentistry, because they did those every couple months and they would promote those on their social media. And so I just made sure to stay in the loop on what was going on. And that was a really good way that, I could ask my questions. Definitely was timid because it's like a new space. I was doing something out of my comfort zone, not knowing anyone going to these things. And most of these kids who were going to them, like some knew each other and I knew no one every time I went. So I would just say that is one thing. If you are on your journey, follow the social media accounts of the schools you're interested in, or even the schools closest to you, because it's going to be a really good way to gain further knowledge on the process it takes, because every single school is so different. And I know we might say that many times as we are talking through this podcast and have these episodes, but it is so true. Every school does things so differently. So just make sure you're knowledgeable about the schools that you are applying to. So fast forward from there, I applied with my 16 DAT. It was a crazy time of applying. I wrote a personal statement, and now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was the most terrible thing I've ever read in my life. And I had like edits from my pediatric dentist. She's like, I wouldn't put this in there. And I was at the time so stubborn. I'm like, no, I like that part. And now I think about it often, like it lives rent free in my head. I literally think about this and I'm like, I definitely shouldn't have put that in there. Like, I think I said something like lives her life off coffee and something else. I'm like, how cheesy. Like,
live, laugh, love.
Like, yeah, live, laugh, love, coffee. No, it was horrible. And so I would just say, if someone is giving you their professional opinion, you don't have to listen to it, but you really might want to take a couple or 10 steps back and think of what they're trying to. Yes, and reevaluate what you're doing. Here comes 2019. At this point, I honestly didn't even know like when interviews happened or when any of that timeline went along. So here I was, February of 2019, and I got my first rejection letter from the University of Oklahoma College of Dentistry in my email. And while, I was like, okay, I was bummed, because it's like, man, that was really not great. But also I was happy because in that email, it said I could reach out after the month of February was over to then schedule a meeting with the dean of admissions, and I could discuss where I needed to improve and, just along those lines, what I needed to do moving forward. So come May of 2019, I graduated with my bachelor's in cell and molecular biology with minors in Spanish and chemistry. I received other awards in school. Something I'm super grateful to share was, and I don't love talking about myself, but I do think it is important to share because these are things that are really great to put in your applications too, are awards that you do receive in school, whether that be like Dean's Honor Roll or President's Honor Roll. So I had a couple of those in my application for my final time graduating, but I did receive overall student female athlete of the year at my school. So that was definitely something that I was really excited to share along the way in my future application. So just little things like that I was super thankful and honored to receive. I did end up taking a gap year at the end of finishing school in 2019. And I had my meeting with the dean of admissions where I went to speak with him and told him like I was fine taking a gap year, which he was very surprised by because most students come in guns blazing, like, okay, I'm ready to go. What do I need to do? I want to apply again this year. And that just wasn't the stance that I was in. I had a very rough time my senior year of school being a student athlete, and I took 17 hours both semesters. It was just the hardest year of school that I had had. And obviously being a student athlete too, my spring semester was jam-packed with stuff, especially being in competitive cheer. That was our season, was the spring season. And so there was just a lot going on, and I was just ready to have a small break, knowing that in the future I was still going to have to take classes again. I had to retake my biochemistry class, my physics class. So it wasn't like I was just not doing anything the whole year. I had stuff that I had to accomplish. So when I did have my meeting with him, that's something I told him, and he just gave me some insight. He was like, okay, that's totally fine. I think this is a good idea. Retake these classes that you need to retake. And he did tell me he wanted me to take either a human anatomy course or a human physiology course in the summer. So that is what I did. I finished school in May, and come middle of June, I started an 8-week human physiology course at the community college here in Oklahoma and took that class, which it was fine. It was just something I did because he told me to do it. There's a lot of little things that they may say, and you really may not want to do them. but I highly suggest taking their advice because it is the little things that can truly show your grit and grind and the fact that you want to make this dream come to life. And my story continues to have a lot of those moments. So just hang on.
Quick question for you. So, how many dental schools did you apply to the first time you applied?
So the first time I applied, I had started an application to OU, to UNLV, because being back home from Las Vegas, my family was still in Las Vegas, so I was planning on applying there, and then also to University of Colorado, because their curriculum is very similar to OU's, at least at the time it was. I'm not sure if it's changed since, but I applied to 3 schools, but only ended up finishing an application to OU. So I
Okay.
only ended up applying to OU the first
Okay.
time. So after I took that class in the summer, I went back to school and completed the few classes that I made D's in. Yes, I made D's in these classes. And so I want this to be a testament for those who are like, oh my gosh, I made a D. I'm never getting into dental school. It is not true. You absolutely can. You just have to have the grit and go for it and take it again. So I started class again after I had finished my summer course. I had some time, and then I started class again in August. Took Biochem 1 and Physics 1 as I started in the fall semester. And then come September of that year, because I was only in school part-time, I ended up starting my first big girl job working at a dental office, which was super exciting. I had been contacting multiple dentist offices around the metro area in Oklahoma and had heard back from none of them. I was calling, leaving voicemails because I had never really applied for a job before. So I was just like, okay, whatever I can do. If I can be a sterile tech, I'll clean stuff, I'll mop your floors. I will do whatever it is you
Take
want
out the
me to do,
garbage.
because
Let me just work
yes,
there. Yes.
seriously. I had advice given to me that it was like, no matter what you're doing in a dental office, as long as you can say you've been in one, that is something you have something to share whenever it comes to getting into school. So I did not care what I was doing. I was just trying to get my name out there, get someone to contact me back. I was telling them I just graduated with my bachelor's degree. I had an interest in going to dental school, the whole shebang. No one contacted me back. So finally I got onto some of the application websites for job applications. I think I finally applied on Indeed, and that is where the only dental office that ever contacted me back was the one that I'm working at right now.
It only takes one.
It only takes one, yes. And so I started working there as an office receptionist. Like I said, I was just desperate to find a job in a dental office. Didn't care what the job was, just wanted to be involved. So I started September 13th of 2019 at this job, and I still currently work at the same office. So I will be finished before my 5-year mark, but it is so exciting to say that I've been there for this long. I'm pretty positive, but I think I'm my dentist's longest working employee that she's had, which is
It's
super
amazing.
cool to share. Within that same year in 2019, before the world shut down crazy enough, I have a fun fact, but I actually got to perform in the Macy's Day Parade. I performed with a company called Spirit of America, and that was in November of that year. So some fun stuff that got to happen. I was really stoked about that. And then I was still taking my classes, and then come 2020 and March hits, COVID happened, and I was let go from my dental office job, and my biochem class that I was currently taking moved to an online course, just like everyone else's courses and lives and jobs. So this was a huge hit, and I always said I was not someone who was good with online classes. This just made me super anxious. I'm so much more of like a visual learner, where I like being in person, writing the notes, seeing them write on the whiteboards. I love being in class because I feel like I'm gaining all the information I need to, and I'm not missing anything, and can raise my hand when I need to rather than having to listen back to lectures. So it was tough for me to finish up this online course. Truthfully, I ended up taking credit for the course and didn't take the grade, because taking the grade would have dropped my GPA. So that also is something too. It's okay to take credit for the courses. They may ask you about it whenever you do apply. I never was asked about it, but I know some schools have asked students why you took credit rather than the grade for the course. So that was just the best choice for me. You know, it's a person by person basis, but I just want to be very transparent. Like sometimes things don't work out. I'm not going to say I'm a master at sciences or like a master at, school and doing the didactics. And that's okay, because I still got into dental school, and I know it's possible for me to still continue on in the future. So Once my class was finished, I started studying to take the DAT again. I was asked to come back to work, but I actually decided I needed to work part-time to get the amount of studying in that I thought I needed. And I took my DAT for a second time, had kind of worked in and out of the office, taking time off, studying, doing what I felt like I needed to do. And here I was getting ready to take my DAT for the second time, which I think every single time I took the DAT, I always pushed it out a couple weeks because I just never felt prepared at the date that I had originally scheduled it. So I took my DAT for the second time and made a whopping 17 all around. Cheers to 1 whole point extra from the first time. Oh, goodness. And the journey continues. So while I did better, I was advised that applying again with that small of a score change would be a waste of money. And I truthfully just wanted to have the honest, I wanted to have the honest truth. So I ended up reaching out to the dean of admissions who I had spoke to the past year and had my meeting with, and just asked him, like, do you think this is smart? And that's what he told me. He wouldn't advise it. So I truly just wanted to do what was best for my pocket, because this process does get very expensive. And that is something we want to be transparent about as well, is it is not a cheap process. So if you are someone who is struggling financially, I know there are options out there where you can request financial help, especially for the DAT. Like, I do know that's something, and we can talk about that more when we discuss our DAT podcast, but just start having the mindset of, I need to save money because these things are not cheap. I know when I first applied for my DATs, they were like $482, and they've since just gone up in price. So
It
just
adds
be
up
prepared.
quick. Yeah.
It does add up very quick. And that's why I say I wanted to do what was best for my pockets and just overall, because it would have been pointless for me to spend all the money. And it would have easily been over like $400 for me to apply just to OU alone. And so doing that again, knowing I wasn't going to get in, like, I wanted that honest truth. So I did not apply in 2019 or in 2020, excuse me. And I moved at this point. When I went back to work, I had moved to the back and started assisting the dentist this year, which I was so excited about because, like I said, I started out as an office receptionist and they needed another assistant in the back. So because my dentist knew my end goal was dental school, she was trusting of that and started mentoring me once I got back to work after taking the DAT. So the rest of that year is kind of a blur. Nothing super crazy happened. I didn't do anything with applying, so I was just kind of in a waiting period, and another gap year was coming to a close. And 2021 started. I continued working and started studying for my DAT again, and was figuring, like, this is the year. This is when it's going to happen. I'm so excited because things were kind of at a bit of a standstill with dental schools at this point. Not as many people were applying. There was more opportunity to get accepted. Some like score averages weren't as high as they usually were. And not to say that that's like a great thing, but for those of us who do struggle in those areas, and I knew I wasn't doing that great on the DAT, like, maybe this would be my chance to at least get an interview to prove myself. Well, here we go. The week of the DAT, I end up getting COVID. And after I had been studying for months, I was unable to take my DAT. So it was really a bummer. And I just felt like it was another just bump in the road, a big, large mountain in the road, I should say. And I wasn't able to apply yet again. So this was another setback. And I just want to take a second to say things happen and we just have to keep moving on. And this was one of those moments for me. So what I ended up having to do was I was going to reschedule my DAT again because I let them know, I have COVID. I'm not able to take this. I had to cancel my test, but I also had to request an extension of my DAT because that same year I was trying to take that by December. And unfortunately, a couple months later, I had a close friend of mine pass away in November. And throughout that time of me trying to study, it was just really hard. I was not in the best mental state. Earlier that year, I had someone close to me pass away. So it was just a really rocky year for me overall. And I was trying to take my DAT in December and tried to move it past December into January because really I didn't have to rush taking the test when applications didn't even open until next June. So I was trying to do this and realized, oh, I'm outside of my 6-month period because once you apply to take your DAT, let's say you apply to take your DAT in February, you have 6 months to take that DAT. So between February and August is when you would have to take that DAT. You get 6 months. So because I had scheduled this in, I can't remember, I think I had scheduled it in May or June, December was my cutoff. So I had to request an extension of the DAT in order to get my test pushed back. And at this time, I had to pay $125 for this extension to hopefully be accepted. It's never a guarantee. So here I was spending more money to just pray that it was going to work out. And thankfully, the extension got accepted, which I was so grateful for, because this was something, it was not a time where I had to pay another almost $500 to take this test. It was just $125 to take this test. But I was still left in the position of paying for my DAT bootcamp subscription to be, to continue on, so that I would have a way of studying. And because that was the program that I decided to use. So in 2022, I took my third DAT. However, gets good. This DAT was scheduled for February, but it was delayed due to an ice storm here in Oklahoma. It's just like, I can't believe how many times I attempted to take this test. Yes, it's like, what? All right, let's see. And so I was unable to take this test because of the ice storm. I was so prepared, though. I was like ready to go, ready to take it. I had extra time. My extension was accepted. That night, I remember going to the gym because I just needed to let go of some like anxiety, nervousness. So I was like, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out. I'm going to come home, prep my lunch for tomorrow, because that's something I made sure to do with my test. That test being 5 hours long, I'm someone who eats every like 2.5, 3 hours. And so I would always make sure to have like a full meal. And that way I would, during my break on my DAT, would eat. And then I would go back and feel like I was replenished. So that's exactly what I did. Went to the gym, came home, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to check my email really quick. And so I go to check my email, and what do I find but an email from the Prometric Testing Center saying that my test was delayed because of the weather, and there was no other information. So I was trying to call and make sure this was true, because I was like, what if this is just like a scam email? I don't know. Like it was just a whole thing. So I was supposed to take it on a Saturday, and then that Sunday, the next day, my dentist and the other dental assistant that worked with us at the time, we were supposed to be flying out to Florida for a CE course over like PRF and facial aesthetic stuff. And I was so stoked, because I was like, this is so great. I'm going to be done with my test. I'm going to get to relax on this trip and enjoy the CE course
Florida.
And my birthday. Yes, enjoy Florida. And it was going to be my birthday on our last day in Florida. So I was like, this is so awesome. Like, I'm going to get to have like a stress-free birthday. Cannot wait. And that is not what happened. So at this point, like I said, there was no other information behind the delay in my test, but I had to wait a week to receive information about rescheduling. And when I did finally receive that email with the information, I had to book my DAT within a month from the time that it was canceled. So I decided to take advantage of my time and continued studying for that month. I didn't just book it right away, because I just felt like that would be too rash of a decision to make, and I did not want to do poorly. And if I had a month, that's a good amount of time to continue studying. So here I was, come March 2022, I am sitting in, taking my DAT. I clicked that button, and what did I get? Another 17 all around. It's just so crazy to me to think all of these things that have happened. So that was my third time applying, or third time taking my DAT, and I got another 17. So at this point, I was feeling very stuck. I didn't know what more to do. I had continued to use DAT Bootcamp, but I wasn't using any other study means. So at this time, I had also reached out to OU student program coordinator, because I knew in order to take another DAT, I would have to request a letter for the DAT to be open for me to take again. So I reached out to the student program coordinator. So I had a meeting with her and requested that a letter be written in order for my DAT to be opened, which she accepted and said she was going to do. And I was so grateful for that, because that letter has to come from a school specifically, and you have to email it to the people who run like the DAT stuff. I can't remember who it is. The ADEA, maybe, I think it is. And so you have to send all this information in with a letter requesting for the test to be opened again. And so I also had to request that my DAT be able to be taken before the 12-month waiting period, because at the time, once you took your third DAT, there was a 12-month waiting period. So if I took it in March, I wouldn't be able to take it until March again. But if that were the case, I wouldn't be taking it until March of 2023, and I wouldn't be applying again until June of 2023. And that would be yet another gap year of not applying. So I had to write a 1-page paper explaining my position and what I would do better, what I would change moving forward in order for this appeal to be granted. Because even if you request an appeal, again, this is not a for sure thing. And it takes them like 60 days to review appeals for them to make a final decision. And so I was waiting and waiting and waiting. And it was like 62 days at this point. I still had heard nothing back. And I'm just waiting to know, like, can I take this? I just need to get going, because at this point it was already May. So I would have had to like quickly hurry and take this test, apply. It's just a stressful process because it is a very timed process. And there's not a lot of time to wait in between when you're trying to figure all of this stuff out. So I ended up calling the ADA myself, and I was like, hi, I'm just curious to know what's going on with my appeal letter. I haven't heard anything back. It's over the 60 days. Like, this is the biggest thing. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. You might feel like you're being absolutely annoying, but if you need your questions answered, it's something you need to do. Don't wait around.
Absolutely.
Seriously, do not wait around. And it's just something I feel like too many people are like, oh, they're going to get back to me. Oh, they're going to do this. Like, you just ask. You never know unless you ask. And so that's what I had to do. I just was ready to go. And so thankfully my appeal was granted. So I was able to schedule my DAT before that 12-month waiting period. And I think I scheduled my test for September 3rd September 3rd is when I took my 4th and final DAT. But this time around, when I was studying, I worked full time. I did not take time off. I worked around my schedule. I studied on the days that I could. So my weekends were filled with studying, and I would go and study after work. And it was a very rigorous process. However, this was the time. Yes, it was exhausting, but so worth it, because I just kept having in the back of my head, short-term sacrifice, long-term gain, short-term sacrifice, long-term gain. And I knew this was not a forever thing. And if I wanted to get to dental school, this is something I just had to do, and I did not have a choice. So I worked full-time. And honestly, I enjoyed my time studying so much more. I didn't feel bogged down like I had to be super focused for 8 to 12 hours a day, every single day of the week, maybe minus one day. But I was able to be at work, have, offer patient care, be learning in that space, and have an outlet, and then also be able to sit and focus once work was done. And I am happy to say this was when I made my best score yet. And while it is not an average score, for me, I was on cloud 9. So I ended up making truthfully, I ended up making an 18 all around with my best science scores yet. They were over 18s, and I was really happy. However, my biology was under an 18. And I made a 16. So I'll explain that a little bit more moving forward. So after I took this test, I immediately applied after taking my final DAT. I had everything ready to go. My personal statement was ready within like a couple days from that point, if not prior to that. I can't remember if I did not apply that late. I applied before and then loaded up my DAT scores right then. So here I was, applied with these scores. No interview invite was received, and I was rejected again. So this was my second time applying. I just want to make sure that's clear. I was waiting for an email, and unfortunately it just didn't happen. And I was honestly very surprised, because I felt like I had done what they told me needed to happen, but it just, nothing happened from it. So while I could have sat back and been like, you know what, maybe this isn't for me, I think the Lord is telling me to move on. I think that I'm just tired. I'm just tired. So many people get that way. I'm just tired. And I could think to myself, I've failed, but I know I hadn't failed, because the only way I would fail is if I quit. And that's not what I was going to do. Okay, so 2023 comes around. I was rejected in December, and I knew I would have to wait till February to have a meeting with them, because the application process has to completely close until you're able to do that. So I ended up meeting with OU's program coordinator again, spoke to her, asked what the best options would be moving forward. We discussed if taking another class was the best idea, if a master's would be a good idea, what I needed to do moving forward as far as dental assisting, if I needed to do more in that area, what did I need to do to beef up my application to finally receive an interview because I had not received one yet. The one thing they did mention to me was they did not want me to take a DAT again, which I was so grateful for. It was like the best gift I could have ever received was hearing that. And I actually think, if I'm remembering correctly, I called her and had a meeting with her on my birthday. That's what I remember that now. Yes, in 2023, it's on my birthday. And I remember talking to her and I just wanted to tell her, like, this is the best birthday gift I've ever had. Like, to not have
Thank
to
you
take this
so
test
much.
again. Yeah, it's like to not have to take this test again truly is like the best gift. But she did suggest I take an upper level biology class, whether it was online or in person, in order to basically help with my biology score for my DAT because it was consistently lower. So that's what I decided to do. I ended up applying to school for the third time, all the same scores, a lot of the same material. However, I did have some add ons to my application as far as CE courses I had attended in the meantime and like CPR stuff, different things along those lines. So I enrolled in an online biology class, and this was an upper level biology class. And I had to find something where I was able to still work, but then also be in class, like take the class at the same time. And I had a really tough time trying to find something. So I finally found a class that worked, enrolled in this class. And here I was 3 days before the start of my class, the class got canceled. So it was just another bump in the road. I was like, how does this stuff keep happening? So I was frantic. Apparently, they had tried to call me multiple times, which they did not call me multiple times. And the woman I spoke to on the phone did not use very kind tones with me. And I was just stressed at this time trying to figure this all out. And I was trying to get in touch with the program coordinator at the school, trying to call all around. Finally, she called me back on her cell phone and it's just so nonchalant, answers the phone. She's like, "Hey girl, what's going on?" Like, no, like this isn't a hey girl moment. Like, you don't understand. Like, you don't understand. The world is crashing down. I think I just am broken into 1,000 pieces. Like, it was just such a dramatic time. So I told her, I was like, listen, this is what's going on. My class got canceled. So long story short, I got my refund back from that class, had to find another class to enroll in, ended up going through UCSD extended studies. So if any of you are needing an online class, go through them. They are fantastic. I am so happy with the class I decided to go with because the classes they teach are more of a graduate level course load. And especially like specifically with my biochem class, it was so much different compared to my university biology course. This was big time, like graduate level. So I was very pleased with what I went with and super excited to say I made an A in the class. I worked super hard and I'm just so glad that it happened. It was the roughest 10 weeks of my life. It was rough, but it was worth it. And I'm so glad I did because I learned a lot and I got to actually dive into dentistry within the class too. So it was super fun. Enjoyed it very much. So within this time of being in class, I started class on September 11th. But before I even started class, I received my first ever interview acceptance on September 5th of 2023 from University of Oklahoma's College of Dentistry program. And I didn't realize it at the time, but this was a first round interview invite. And even till this day, I'm like beaming, smiling. If you're not watching this on YouTube, like I just like, oh, it's such a dream still sitting here today to even be able to share those words with you after attempting and working to get to this point for so long. I was sitting at the office right next to my dentist that I work for. And she's been a part of this entire journey too. You have to realize that. So it's been a lot of up and downs for both of us along the way because she did not think that she would have me working for this long. And you really do make a bond with someone and you learn their ways and just that mentorship bond that we had. I was sitting there and had just finished lunch. We were about to go back to our afternoon patients. And I was like, I'm just going to check my email real quick. And I click refresh on my inbox and I just see University of Oklahoma College of Dentistry at the top. And I am pretty sure my stomach fell out of my butt. And I just could not believe it. I clicked on the email and I just looked at my dentist and I just started bawling because I finally had a chance to tell my story and share why I wanted to do dentistry and be in this field. And it truly was so surreal. So
this was the furthest you'd ever gotten so far in your journey. So it was extremely exciting to get that interview.
Yes, so true. And even before I had received one, I believe you had received one before I did, Maddie. right? I think 'cause
We
you
were
had
like so close together though.
we were so close together. That's right.
Yeah.
So that had happened
Everything,
on
honestly,
September.
everything was really
It
close
really
together.
did. It was
Like
a lot of
we
like
were like
back
a
and
week or
forth.
2 weeks. Yeah. Which made it
It
really
was.
exciting.
Yes, it did. So I started my class on September 11th. I had my interview on September 15th. And after September 15th, I had to wait 3 months because OU just they do their acceptance day on National Acceptance Day. So here comes December 15th. I'm feeling super hopeful. Everyone around me feels super hopeful. It's like we all just kind of have this feeling of we know it's going to happen. Like I'm going to be accepted. I just had so much hope because I finally was able to go and share my story. And I felt like my interview was rock solid. I did not walk out of that interview with any doubts, regrets, wishing I would have said more. Like I knew I shared everything I had to share. It was so relaxed too. And not in a poorly relaxed way, but like a comfortable, relaxed way. Like I knew I was being myself and giving them the best of me. So here I was, December 15th, super pumped. Maddie and I both waiting. Luckily, I didn't have to work that day, but she did. And I know along this that I won't share like what happened with Maddie because she'll share that in her story. But here I was, and I was waiting. 8:30 rolls around, 9:30 rolls around, 10:30, 11:30, and I'm like, I just don't know. The odds of this are seeming pretty slim. And I told my mom, and I had another really close friend of mine here who had come to stay with me so that if I needed comfort, she would be there, or if I needed celebration, she would be there to do that too. And I told them, I was like, at 12 p.m., I'm going to check my email because if I haven't heard by then I feel like I didn't get in. So 12 o'clock rolls around. I decide to check my email at 12:07, and I was waitlisted on acceptance day. This was not the news I was hoping for at all, considering, and I didn't even mention that, but OU was the only school I applied to again for the third time. I had applied to them, only finished my application for them the first time, only applied to OU the second time, and only applied the third time. And
Which I will say is not common. Usually students apply to multiple schools. It depends. But for Dominique, I mean, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but that was the one and only school she wanted to go to at the end. She did research on other schools, and at the end of the day, she wanted to be close to family. She was living in Oklahoma and loved their dental school. And so that's why she only applied to that school and put all her eggs in that basket. But typically, students do apply to more than one school, but it really depends on the student. Some students apply to 20 schools if you have those finances. Some only apply to 4 or 5 schools. Some apply to 10 schools. So it depends case to case basis, but it is Dominique is unique in the fact that she did only apply to one school.
yes, I'm glad you touched on that because it was something I missed sharing along my story. So it is true. Yes. If there is something I would say, I don't know if I want to speak this, for me personally. I just knew, like Maddie said, this was where I wanted to go. Having already made that move from Las Vegas to Oklahoma and my entire family moving back to Oklahoma as well, I just knew I didn't want to have to relocate and be somewhere else. And that's just really my personal choice. I don't suggest that. I really don't. I think you should apply to multiple schools because it's going to open your pool a lot more. But I just knew what OU had to offer, and I was really excited about it. And it was not recommended by many people. So I was waitlisted on acceptance day. This, like I said, not the news I was hoping for, but that was a Friday. I had shed some tears and frustration, and just I had to be okay with it at the time because I know receiving a waitlisted email for other people was something they would pray for. And I had never been here before. So even though this was not a no, being waitlisted, this wasn't a I didn't get in at all. It wasn't an I did get in, but it wasn't a no, it was a not yet. And I want you to keep that in mind when you're going through this journey. If things are not lining up and your direction seems like you have mountains and hills and valleys and all these things in the road, it's not a no, it's not yet, but you have to keep pushing through to get to this point. So I decided to meet with the director of admissions. That decision day was December 15th, a Friday. I emailed him on Sunday. And that is why I say the squeaky wheel gets the grease, because I was ready to have this conversation. I did not want to sit there and let it brew and have my mind going in circles. Why not me? Why not me? Why this person? Why that person? Because comparison is a thief of joy. And you need to keep that in mind. Comparison will never make you feel better. It doesn't help your situation at all. It doesn't change your situation at all. And I didn't want to allow myself to do that because it wasn't healthy and it wasn't going to help me. So I met with the director of missions on Monday, ended up meeting with him, and we spoke for like an hour and a half, had the best meeting. And he gave me some news and he was like, hey, if this doesn't happen again, like we really don't know. Even if you're waitlisted, like I couldn't be told where I was on the list of being waitlisted. If I was the first one, the 10th one, the 27th one, I had no idea. But we weren't even sure if the odds, he wasn't able to give me any of that information. But he did tell me if I weren't to get in this time again, he would want me to take my DAT again. He would want me to take more classes and get the rest of my expanded functions for dental assisting in Oklahoma. And in my brain, I was like, I will do whatever it is you need me to, but I am one person with a full-time job who needs to work, and I have no clue how I'm going to get all of this stuff done. So I just took a step back. I was like, okay, I have things I know I can do. I'm going to just wait a second because right now it's December. People have to make choices within 30 days. They get like an extra 15 days or something if they have other acceptances come through. It's a weird way how it works. And every school does it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's like a weird way how it works. And I could be totally wrong on that. I'm just trying to remember what he was telling me. So I decided I was going to wait. There were some sealant courses that were coming up in Oklahoma. I almost applied for it, but I was very hesitant because the expanded function courses here are like $425 for that specific course. And that would have been the next course that I was going to take. And at the time I thought, oh, my deposit for school is like $500, which I was very much wrong. It was like double that price. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to wait a second. Like, I feel like I'm going to know if this is the right move to make come April. If I haven't heard anything back yet, I will make that choice and move forward with the next steps in applying again. But needless to say, on February 12th of 2024, I was accepted to the University of Oklahoma College of Dentistry, and I will be joining the class of 2028 starting this May.
Yay!
And I truly cannot believe it. Like, it makes me emotional even getting to say that because you work so hard. At least, I know everyone does, but it's like you sit here and you wait and you wait and you have gap years and you have all these hills and valleys like I talked about. And it took me so long to get to this point, and finally getting it, it's like it's incredible. And I'm just so excited to share the story because I want this to be a testament to those of you who feel like you've failed or feel like you can't move forward. You can, and you absolutely can get it and make your dreams come true. You have to believe in yourself though, and you can't just quit when it gets hard, because if you quit, then you have failed, like I said before. And until you actually stop, you never know what can happen. And I am just so thankful I didn't give up. And some silly quote my mom has always said is, the cream will rise. I don't know. It's just always something that has stuck in the back of my head because over time, there were people, I'm sure, along the way of me applying who had maybe taken the DAT one time, two times. They're like, nope, it's not for me. But if I would have done that, I wouldn't be here today. And I wouldn't be able to say that I'm starting dental school in May. And even though it took me way longer than most people who apply to school, I'm excited to share the story because I know for the people who it does take this long for, they're going to have a journey that they can look on and be like, okay, I haven't done that much yet, so I can't quit. And I even told myself that even if I didn't get in again, I wasn't stopping, because I had read a story on the DAT Bootcamp Facebook group of a guy who had taken the DAT 5 times and had applied 6 times and had not gotten into dental school yet. And he finally got into school. And I was like, okay, until I am there, I'm not stopping. And so you have to have that mindset of determination and grit. And if this is truly something you want to do, move forward, do it, bust your butt. Like I said, short-term sacrifice, long-term gain. It is so worth it in the end. And at this point, your mindset and just idea behind what you're doing is going to become so solidified that nothing and no one can break that. Not in your mind, not in your heart. It's going to happen. You just have to keep working for it. So I'm really excited and thankful that I got to share this story. And I truly hope that at least someone gained something from this. and just have the mindset of never quitting, because you never know what's going to happen in the end of that super long, bumpy road. And a quote that I just heard on an Ed Milet podcast the other day, I was mind blown by this, but it said, the tests you come across, whatever those are, those bumps in the road, become your testimony. And when I heard that, I was like, it hit so deep, because I was like, that is exactly what this journey has been for me. This has become my testimony, and it's something I get to share, and it's something special and unique to me. And I know it's something that is going to inspire others. And I really hope this has. So thanks so much for listening. I know that was long winded, but I hope you got something out of it today.
Dom, that was so good. I have heard Dominique's story before, but I learn something each time I hear it. And something that I already know, but further has solidified, is just how diligent and how much grit Dominique has. I am inspired by her story, and I hope and know that all of you have some inspiration from the story as well. Definitely Dominique taking longer maybe than other students. It just makes that acceptance that much sweeter, and her story that much better, and her to be able to help so many people who think they're not good enough, because it is a really hard journey. But Dominique persevering, never giving up, not listening to all the people who doubted her or told her no, just kept going, is going to now be a doctor, which is so inspiring. And I look up to Dominique so much, and I'm very grateful to have her by my side during this journey together. And I'm so glad that you guys were able to tune in and hear her story today. Next week's episode, I will share more on my personal story, and we will go from that point. But thank you guys again for listening. Please follow us on our social medias. We have an Instagram. It's Dental Mentors Podcast. We have a YouTube channel, and we will be posting on both of those platforms every Friday. And we've got a lot more episodes in the upcoming weeks to release about everything dental school related and the process. Please, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to each of us. We have personal platforms as well you can find on our Dental Mentors account, and we would be more than happy to answer any questions as usual. But until then, I hope you guys have a good week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.